Hello again. A very quick turnaround. This is Surprise Stare Games at Spiel.digital in our next stream, which is entitled Ask Us Anything, bravely. So this kind of relies on us having some audience and some questions. So while everybody catches up, including us, we better chat amongst ourselves, haven't we, Tony, I guess?
I think we should do, yeah.
What do you want to talk about? Yeah.
We could talk about board games, I suppose.
Board games? Oh, we've done a lot of that.
Yeah, that was an interesting discussion we had just now with Brett and Matt. I enjoyed that. So I would point people to go looking for the Twitch archive of that. It's always good to Brett and Matt, actually.
Definitely, yes. It was nice to see. It was nice to nearly see Nick at the end as well.
Yes. Yes, these COVID times have made things rather strange and unusual. Not being able to get together for the SSG designer days or for play tests at home or collaboration sessions, all that kind of stuff we just can't do. Just even going to the board game clubs.
Yeah, yes. Well, I'm finding it difficult because I need to do face-to-face testing. For example, for Kingmaker, and the only way I can really find out whether the little things like the size of the components, are these counters the right size, and I can produce them. I've got a mock-up physical version, but until you actually really sit players down and get them, leaning over the board and moving stacks of counters around, you can't really tell whether the physical components are going to work. So that's a bit of a strange situation to be in.
In terms of we sort of half worried about that in the past with FSG stuff, haven't we? We've sort of thought about the idea.
Yeah, it is. It's Charlie, but it might be distorted.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
we're getting feedback from Charlie. I'm not quite.
Another call.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I can manage that actually. Actually, I'm really not sure how I can manage that. Hang on, I will have to just mute myself and see if I can sort that out. We'll just see.
Okay, you do that, and I'll keep talking. So today, everybody, while Alan sorts out Charlie, his missus, I had more deliveries from my museum of board games, which one day I'll have to actually find a physical premises for. But I have Crow Show, a shooting game, totally inappropriate nowadays, I guess. Not quite sure about some of the iconography. Well, not sure what they're trying to say with the crows there. That's a bit, I don't know, it feels a bit weird. But it does come with a cork gun. There's that little cork rifle thing. And some plastic crows. Not sure I've ever really thought about yellow crows before. And there's a framework, almost like a theatre sort of arrangement that you set up, and you put your crows in, hang them on a wire, and then you shoot them off with your cork gun. Don't know whether this kind of thing is still being produced nowadays. I'm pretty sure most people would regard it as not very politically correct, but then you can get all the feeling of this kind of stuff from video games, including the splatter, I suppose. And relate in the same parcel from the same eBay seller was this forest shooting game. This one doesn't come with an air pop gun, so I'm going to have to use the other one. But you can see the box is a bit scuffed. But I'm never that fussed about the boxes apart from the covers. I think I rather love the old retro side of things there, and that's got no gun, but it has got animals that you can shoot and like that. There we go. So I've just been pinging it. Alan's just come back and gone away again. Banging on about.
That's all right. I'm back, but I thought that was a nice shot of your products.
Yes, well, it's such an amazing amount of stuff that's out there that most people don't care about, to be honest with you. So it's rather lovely to be building up this collection of gorgeous things. I mean, they just look. I wonder. There's a sort of presentational style which you don't get anymore.
Yeah.
The idea of the box.
It is, yes.
Artwork. Beautiful piece of artwork, rich colouring and everything else, and then the rest of it is a fairly plain box. There's no sidebars. There's no side illustrations. There's no back of the box with the rubric on it about how many players and what it's all about. Yeah. It just feels different of a different time, because it is. and not necessarily worse for that, you know.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the. I mean, I've got the old style, some of the old style Kingmaker stuff, which I was looking at yesterday. I mean, really looking under my. I mean, if you look at this is the old style of rulebook. You see, it's all just single, black and white, and that's it. And like, there's
Reams of text.
loads and loads and loads and loads of text. There's no. I mean, there's. Oh, look, an actual diagram, which is like. Yeah, it's just a different age. It really is. And this is the old original Ariel. Look, Ariel, nice film.
I'm often struck by a lot of the rule sets you get in these older games are inside the lid of the box, and
yes,
and so they're very
like that.
Not necessarily because they fill the entire lid, but often they're just little pasted panels on the inside. And they're really economic with explaining, they kind of assumes you know what a game is in some cases.
Yeah. All those old Spears ones had that, didn't they? They had it. They had the printed on the inside. Yeah, the Chad Valley ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 4 power. I bought a thing called Bomb Bird, which is a little you're flicking plastic balls using a little sort of flicky metal arrangement at this wire where you've fixed your little birds, and they're sort of hanging there by balance. But the first half of the rules on the inside of the box tell you that there are 4 different versions of the game, and then the last 2 paragraphs tell you what you're actually supposed to do, which is just flip the balls at the birds. Whoever knocks off the most birds wins. So it's not even. It's sort of pseudo advertising. It just they say fair approach to rules, which is
it's a kind of charming. It's a charming approach, isn't it? And they often. I think there was two basic styles of box. I think, wasn't there? There was the TV tie-in pastel primary colours. Well, like your one you showed earlier on today, which was with Noel Evans on the cover, all glossy and glossy, reds on white and that kind of thing. And then there was the I don't know, I don't know if because they're aged, but they're vaguely pastel-y or dark pastel-y ones, often with the writing not quite clear enough on the sides. You couldn't quite make out what it was. A very old-fashioned, well, obviously now old-fashioned kind of style of doing it. I was thinking of Contraband, that little card game. Had a kind of muddy. Is that a Pete's thing? You've got them, didn't you?
Yeah, I got like the Wimbledon game, which is a card game. Pete tie-in, but that's it. It's green box. There's nothing on the bottom.
There's nothing on the back at all. Yeah,
it's a tie-in because it's a Fred Perry thing. So Fred Perry being the only Englishman to win Wimbledon. Until Andy Murray did it. Actually, he's not an Englishman, I'd say British person, actually, because Andy Murray's not an Englishman. Typical Pete's rulebook, the little tiny...
tiny ring,
Lovely consistency. And this one comes with the actual tennis ball as well. Which is,
wow.
Yeah, because these things would have... Being in 1960s, this is early 60s scam. So it would have, I think, suffered... A great many copies would have suffered the loss and breakage of cards and the tennis ball itself.
It's if you look back at games from the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, I think a lot of people in general public tend to think of games as being things like Monopoly or Cluedo, which are very kind of flat productions. They're kind of, there's no innovation in kind of components. I mean, the innovation of Monopoly is the little metal figures for the playing pieces, which isn't a huge innovation. But if you go back further, especially if you go back war games further, there's some really, really interesting physical components that you get. There was John
L'Attaque, for instance, has got the lovely little tin bases with the cards.
That's right.
Tin arrangement.
I mean, John Curry at the History of Wargaming project has got a collection of older games, and there's one. There was one which was a kind of British Army one, which is quite. It's got a weird thing. It's got a traditional board, and it's got a counters thing, but it actually has tracing paper things where you can actually put writing on of orders and things like that on it. And of course there's Sea Strike, which was I mean, which is I think 1973, I think from memory, and Sea Strike, which is another war game, modern naval war game. It came with little well, actually fairly chunky pieces for the ships up to the cruiser, which is about this big, and they were all laminated, plastic laminated, because the idea was you could then use a China Graph pencil, remember those, and you could actually upgrade the weapons by marking on it what the weapon upgrades were. So that was quite innovative, and instead of having a you could play it on the carpet, but it came with a set of islands which you could put, if you wanted to play it on a table, put these islands on so you could see where the land was.
Yeah. Well, I've been with my collecting over the COVID summer, if you like, spring and summer. I mean, there's lots of unusual things. I mean, games like Bermuda Triangle, where you actually have like a vortex that moves.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. The moving of the vortex, then they're lost. They're lost in the Bermuda Triangle. Or the situation games from Parker, which are basically race jigsaw games, area control, where the teams or the opposite player have a set of jigsaw pieces that match the board, and both have the same sets of pieces. But the idea is you've got to try and build into the picture of the base board and set up little garrisons of different types of pieces. And those different pieces do different things. So you build your helicopter pad before your other player. You can start deploying your jigsaw.
Yes, that's right. Situation. What's it called? Situation
4. And
Situation 4.
7 for multiplayer.
Because I've played one of that. I can't remember which one it was. Situation 4 or Situation 7. Because we were going to design it. One of the ideas that Neo and I had was we could take that jigsaw idea and could have a Civ builder using that.
Yeah.
So you build a jigsaw.
Not Civ, but taking that mechanic.
Yeah. But also then you thought you could then swap it over. You could effectively swap it around, and you could destroy the civilizations as the second half of the game somehow.
Yeah.
Not quite sure how that would work, but
the rise and decline. Yeah.
The rise and decline of civilization, which is a nice idea. We haven't taken it any further than some very, very basic ideas, and so that's
that kind of thing feels like something that Matt Green and Sam Mercer would come up with. Remember they did sort of Settlers meets a Tiddlywinks almost. It's a wonderful combination of eclectic mechanics, and this feels like it would be something that they would take to that sort of accessible sort of level. When I'm viewing the idea that if you raced and built your jigsaw and built, every time you build a field, then you get a corn or grain. If you built a river, you get fish, and then you would have a resource management game. But maybe it's not so much a race as something a bit like Mega City Oceania, where you have a time to do something between your turns, and then on your turn you capitalize with what you've managed to put together. But then with jigsaws, you need to have a limiting factor, I think, to stop people who are really good at jigsaws, that spatial awareness thing, just winning every single time. So there'd need to be a limiting factor. But I think we're onto something here.
Yeah, I think the trick is how you, because the jigsaw stuff needs to be timed. The trick is how you break that up. Because if you've got timed jigsaw making and then you've got some form of resource management or deployment stuff, how you build that in.
Well, I think this is what I love about Mega City Oceania is the fact that the time between your turns is not dead. It's really important. So you could have a situation where you decide to extend the jigsaw to make more things available to you, and maybe you can't do that without the right resources. Or I'm going to consolidate this turn, and simply by doing nothing, I increase my resources, which means I can then have a better turn, if you like.
Because use your resources to buy more pieces, buy access to more pieces, for example. That'd be quite nice. Well, we've definitely got, I like this. I like the there's a growing tendency to have more 3D, isn't there? In like Mega City, although that again that does go back to that goes back to the 50s and 60s in wargame. Some of the 50s stuff is interesting because I think I seem to remember there was a kind of almost like one of these what do you call it, pinball machine type affairs with a battlefield, and you had sliders with magnetics on them to put. So you push the slider under in order to try to detonate your mines, which would then
Lovely. Well, I
spring
got
up
a driving
and
game.
knock over the enemy soldiers.
Did you see the driving game I got? The driving test. Basically, it's got a little cleaner arm and a joystick, and you move it, and it just moves a magnet underneath the board.
It's those things are so clever, aren't they? In a way,
analog, not digital. It's analog. That's wonderful mechanical.
Yeah. So the analog.
The mechanics are mechanical in that game.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing a sort of horse racing game design at the moment, based on a game called Also Ran from Chan Valley in the 1930s.
Oh right, yeah.
Now the thing about that game is you set up the race course, which has a number of different coloured pieces, and each piece has got multiple colours on it. And then you set your horses up, and each horse has got an arrow on it in a different position. So when it moves, it points to a different colour depending on which position.
Yeah.
And the idea is that once you set the race going, it's pre-programmed, because will point to the yellow, which means you move the yellow horse, and that will move underneath the first horse, which means it will point to blue, which then means when the blue horse moves. And so there is no variation in it. Once you set it going, the whole thing plays out. So the idea is that you would bet at the start of the game, you run the horse race through, and you have random startup on tiles and random setup on the order of the horses. Now, obviously, as a mechanism, that's really quite interesting. So what happens if you could actually influence the movement of the horses? So you have pre-programmed nature, but at various points along the way, you could say that horse drops down a place.
Yeah.
And it triggers a different color than the one it would have triggered before.
Or you just change your color.
Yeah, or just the color either side, or that horse doesn't move, and all that kind of stuff. So if you start introducing those elements with a bit more control, you can still have a game that has effectively a pre-programmed route. You can influence it a little bit.
Yes.
And again, if you introduce the betting on it as well,
I think you need to do that as well. Keep the betting, because it's all about the betting, isn't it?
And then it becomes. The whole point is that the horse race should whistle by in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
A horse race that takes 30 minutes to get through with people overanalyzing. It needs to be quite quick. And you need to be able to look at it, and with the cards you've got and the things that people are doing, you should have a rough idea of how it's going to play out. And then maybe the clever card play is what flips, maybe an almost inevitable red horse win becoming a red or green horse win. And that's where I think it becomes. I mean, Camel Up does it with the dice.
Yeah.
And it introduces that random element. Because that dice has come out, it's not going to affect the green horse, the green camel again, but this round. But you can kind of have that kind of decision making. So, I think these old games are beautiful to look at, but I think they're also very interesting to look at mechanically.
Yeah, some of them. Some of them have got mechanics that people have forgotten about. So you could just nick those mechanics and reintroduce them into your.
I don't say
borrow. Repurpose, yes. Well, because I was struck by Trajan. It's got this revolutionary mechanic, which is the Mancala, which is probably the oldest game design mechanic in the world.
Yeah.
You think,
calling these dull Euro.
I quite like. I mean,
Trajan. I detest.
Do you? Oh, I like Trajan. There you go. We can differ.
Absolutely. I think Macau is probably the best implementation of the point salad approach to things. I find Macau wonderfully challenging.
I've only got the German version. I've only got the German version of Macau, and I never got around to printing out and putting all the English version of the cards in.
Well, you can buy the new version. It's been reprinted.
I don't.
Buy that instead. It's a wonderful game.
Yeah, I've played it. I think I only played it a couple of times. I can see it's good. Yeah, I do. I did like it, and that's why we bought it. But we could only get the German one. So, but then it
speaks better German than I do. So,
well, now I could probably use it. I could probably now use it as part of my learning German thing, couldn't I? Actually, yeah. I'm reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in German at the moment, which is quite fun. Just started. Yeah.
So it's Willy Wonka then, is it?
Pretty much.
What's the German for Oompa Loompa then? I'm really fascinated.
Just Oompa Loompa. Yeah, well, Schokoladen.
Die Oompa de Lumpen. Die Lumpen de Oompa. I don't know.
Good old BG Stats is here. I'm very sorry.
Is that BG Stats Suzanne?
Suzanne
with the green hair that we meet every year at Essen. And
this is one of the difficulties with this whole thing, is that people in the audience can be people we know, but we don't know them because we don't know their names on their nicknames.
Because if it's Suzanne, I need to say thank you very much because my Subbuteo has arrived and it's gorge. So it's a thing of beauty. It's a 19. It's not the first edition, but it is Suzanne. Oh, yes, it's a 1904, which it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with Subbuteo back in the day.
Ask us a question, Suzanne.
Yeah, ask us a question. Yeah, please do. Why not? Otherwise, we'll just keep.
He's one of only 2 people who have green hair at Spiel every year.
Oh, right.
And the other one is Freedom and Fries, of course.
August Company. Or is it? I don't know. I used to play Subbuteo back in the day. Yeah, I was rubbish.
And you moaned the lack of weaponry upon them and decided that exactly. More your ill.
Much better. I was about as good at Subbuteo as I was at football. Yeah, I was rubbish at both of them.
Did you run up to other players and just shove them and hope that the ball would go to the next? Because that's not how you play football. Why you
flicking at people don't work really.
No. Well, actually, a lot of football is different nowadays.
Yeah, I know. There's a.
There you go. First question today. What are you working on right now? Off you go, Al. Come on.
Okay.
Right now.
I am right now working on redeveloping Kingmaker, which is a massive project for Gibson's Games, and I've been doing that for about a year. Obviously, picked exactly the right time to do this because we were getting really into the playtesting in February, and then the COVID came in, and so
Kingmaker is very important, though. It really is an iconic game in the history of board gaming. Because I believe it's a war game, Euro game crossover.
Not really. No, it's not. No, it's not.
I think it is. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you turn it into the 20th.
Well, I mean,
is it more like I suppose a bit like the coins and the roots sort of stuff?
No. Kingmaker was its own animal. Kingmaker came out of that era of diplomacy. And early kind of early war games. The thing is, it's not really. Well, okay, it is a war game in the sense that it's war themed, but it's not anything like a conventional war game. It's more, it more came from diplomacy than it did from wargaming. And it's actually a politics game. If you play it as a military game, you're probably going to lose because it's all. I mean, classic Kingmaker, it's 7 players. So the idea that you might win on your own in a 7-player game. And the 7 is distinctive because it's the same as diplomacy, isn't it? It's 7 players, you see, and it quickly gained an ardent following in both America and the UK. Interestingly, because it for some reason it just chimed with Americans.
So how do you approach the idea that really 7 players is highly optimistic in the modern board gaming world, and that really 3 or 4 players is probably.
Yeah, well, I mean,
have you optimized the game to work with that particular level now, or is it 2 to 5 really, or
we're doing 2 to 5 really? Well, I have one of the problems with Kingmaker is that it could drag on forever because people will turtle. I mean, and the system allows you to turtle. So you grab a royal piece. The game is you're wandering around with loads of nobles in England and Wales, and the idea is that none of the royalty has any actual agency. Your faction represents the nobles who are manipulating the royal pieces, and eventually becoming the sole king. So the idea is you grab a royal piece and take it with your major stat, your major army, and you hide away somewhere in Wales or in the Isle of Wight or in Calais or somewhere, and you build up your forces. And when you're big enough, you then come back and smash everyone into the ground. That's what can be the overall idea. So it lends itself to turtling, particularly if you've got somebody who only wants to win just themselves and doesn't want to ally with everybody. So you could have 6 hours. 6 hours in, people would then decide, oh, let's just have a big battle and get it over with.
How does this map then to games like Twilight Imperium or Eclipse? Because Eclipse is very much a game where you kind of save up until you can get into the galactic core, for instance, where there's plenty of juicy things and so on, and maybe make a play against another player who can give you the rich points that you need. Is there any similarity between those approaches? Is there something that leads?
Well, hasn't Eclipse got a kind of well-defined kind of end game, isn't it? A limited number of turns.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, do you introduce a limited number of rounds?
Well,
there's no benefit then, is there? If nobody actually wins after 9 rounds.
Well, yeah,
fest.
Yeah, I mean, in Kingmaker, there are some kind of classic house rules that people have for Kingmaker. So you can play to a time limit, and then there's a complex thing which Avalon Hill got hold of it because they did the American version, and Avalon Hill, being a war game publisher, they had their development team in it, high up development team, and they came up with lots of advanced rules, which were all into the kind of military and the detail, and they had a combat results table and dice rolls for losses and things. And one of the things they introduced was a complex parliament system. So basically, each card you had, each noble and each town you owned and each office you had a certain number of votes in the House of Commons, and the nobles all had votes in the House of Lords, and so did the bishops. And so basically, you could win at the time limit if you got enough votes in the House of Commons, enough votes in the House of Lords. But of course, there were I can't remember the figures. I've got them in the rules back there somewhere. But it's just a complicated thing. And how do you keep track? Well, if you've got 180 votes in the House of Commons, and it's important whether you've got 23 or 24, then you have to keep track of everything and the situation.
Don't you think games like Lancaster do the politics side of things a bit better in a much more good way?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I think I recommended you get Lancaster, didn't I? When you
I have got Lancaster. Yeah, I've got that. I think
it does that political thing really well, because the mechanics of scoring are based on your ability to override the votes and get the votes to swing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean,
wonderful worker placement, but the politics is done in such a wonderfully Euro type way, which is cashing your vote cubes at the right time for a yes or no.
Exactly. I mean, I've looked at some other games. Here's there's 156 votes in the House of Commons. So for example, it's important that the Warden of the Northern Marches has 2 votes. Chancellor of Duchy of Lancaster has 3 votes. So keeping track of things is difficult. But I've never liked that bit anyway, because it's just too complicated. So modern games do get around that problem. And one of the best ones, which I was reading about, because Richard Dewsbury posted on it earlier today, I think, which is called Wars of the Roses, York versus Lancaster, and it was a Z-Man game, and it's actually nothing like Kingmaker, and it solves all that problem. But it's a Euro, it's a kind of Euroized game, so that has got classic Euro mechanisms, like it's control of it's area control. So it's got control of regions is very important in that, and you actually bid for cards, so you're effectively bribing nobles. And turn order is very important, because turn order means if you're winning on points, you go last in the turn, which is absolutely critical in this, because everybody else does things, and you have to do your combats first if you're leading, so that everybody else can see what's happened and then take advantage and wipe you out. So there's the built-in kind of catch-up mechanism in there, which is very, very different from Kingmaker. My role in Kingmaker is developer, I'm not redesigning it. There's no way you can't redesign Kingmaker to make it into a modern Euro type game.
Really? We were talking to Brett and Matt earlier about Elysium, and Elysium started off as a dice game, I believe. You rolled a series of dice, and that gave you the resources, the bidding. I think it is possible to develop a game and effectively change the way that it approaches certain things, surely.
Well, yes, but then you're effectively redesigning it. Then
why spend 18 months developing a game from the 1970s if what you end up with is basically the game for the 1970s? So what's in it for the publisher to reprint a game that people can get on the secondary market really easily?
Oh, well, I mean, it's not that easy.
Slightly devil's advocate question. I don't really know.
Yeah, I know it's not that easy. No, but I think the point is there that the problem with Kingmaker, with the original Kingmaker, is that it's got rules difficulties. I mean, it's all about interpretation of rules, because it's 1974 type of thing, which meant that every group that plays Kingmaker has got its own house rules. So there's no consistency in approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was getting at is, if you look at a game like Twilight Imperium 3 and Twilight Imperium 4, each iteration tries to smooth away
that's what
the rough
I'm
doing that caused the problems with it.
That's what I'm doing with my role in Kingmaker is to smooth away the rough edges, make it a more playable game for now, but still to keep the essence of Kingmaker. And what I didn't want to do is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I could design a Wars of the Roses game. I mean, that's not a problem. I could, readily design a Wars of the Roses game, but I didn't want to do that. My role is to bring out, if you like, the essence of what Kingmaker is all about, and streamline it, make it a game which lasts. Well, my target is 30 minutes plus 30 minutes per player. So a 4-player game, you should be able to do in 2.5, 3 hours. If you know it, you should be able to do it in 2.5 hours. And we've had 4-player games which have taken under 2 hours. And that's good. So that involves streamlining the movement, taking away all the discussions that people have to have in the original game about what happens if classic one which arose. In fact, day before yesterday, I think somebody asked a question on the Geek. He said, "What happens when there's a royal peace in a town? I go in there, I beat somebody's army in the open field, not in the town, the open area of a square, and so my nobles are now in the open area of the square. Can I actually capture that royal peace?" And the rules don't cover that adequately. They don't say what happens, because normally you can't move after combat, and if you're in the open area of a square, you're not in the fortified place. So it's really unclear in the rules. So we clear up all that kind of stuff. We clear up all those.
After a battle, they don't just all stand there.
Well,
just look at the castle they've just conquered and just go, "We'll go in there next turn." There are sort of common sense things you kind of have to apply to now, because you're not doing the game benefit by making it awkward. You want the answer that's common sense, don't you?
But you can't have, but you can't have, you have to cover it. You have to cover it in the rules, even if you agree that there is a common sense answer. You have to actually say what happens.
Yeah,
and that's what
common sense answer is if you've just beaten somebody and you're right next to the castle.
You
capture the peace.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's more or less what we do. I'm actually in the rules. It basically says, at the end of your turn, if you're in an area and you control the castles in the area, which is quite likely, then you can put your forces where you like in that area. So it's absolutely clear, and that just takes away so much discussion and argument about what the rules mean, and that's the kind of approach that I'm taking with Kingmaker.
But working with Gibson Games is interesting, because I've just done something with Gibson Games as well, and for me, it's a mirror of how I started game design in the first place. The fact that I approached Gibson Games, Roger Hayworth, with the Black Overcoat game, and we went into a house which kind of boiled away into nothing because it was always too many things going on. But Roger was the one that encouraged me to get going. And so I feel with Race the Rails that I've kind of come full circle, and I've finally been able to pay tribute to the start that Gibson Games effectively gave me. Because without Roger, I don't think I would have persisted. And I don't think we'd have got together, because Gibson Games stuff, 95, 94, when Black Overcoat game was when I was starting Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
And we only really started thinking about board game design together about
5 years later.
98 is the realistic time.
That's right.
So how do you feel about working with Gibsons?
Oh, I like working with Gibsons. They're really good company to work with. Yeah, they interestingly, they're not really gamers, but they know about publishing.
Well, they were for the longest time when Roger was in charge of that line of games. He brought them into the world with diplomacy and.
Because they primarily published jigsaws.
Yeah. Although they did do L'Attaque and
I'm not
in the 30s and 40s. They kind of into jigsaws again. I think they did classic card games, didn't they? They did Castell Brothers set of snaps and all that kind of stuff. Happy Families. But
back to the question though, what are you working on right now, Tony? What are you working on?
I've often got lots of stuff going on. I mentioned the racing game thing, but I think the main thing I'm working on really is I'm doing some collaborations, but I think attentional shipping is has had a lack of love these last 6 months. But I think it's the thing in my
Yeah.
head. I'm really keen.
I meant to ask you how that was going, because it hasn't. We haven't talked
Well,
about
my
it
rule
for
book
like.
is terrible for it. I did try and play test the
Okay.
rules when I started working in
Yeah.
London again.
Yeah.
I did play test the rules with the guys from Hempstead, and they had the bugger's job trying to work out what I was going to write. So I
Yeah.
did because he did such a good job with the Alabari rules. So I think I would like to pick that up. I think the game itself, I'm really happy with the game itself. What I need is the developers to start. I mean, someone like Fabio, who I worked with on Alabari for Studio H, he was such a good developer. He's such a good developer, and I'd like him to get loose on that. But it's so difficult nowadays to get any attention, really. And we can't speak to people face to face. I mean, this year would have been perfect for all of us to be less and speaking to people. We could have a chat with these guys and shown them things, but we can't. So that's just the way it is. With me going my own way, obviously, I think that's a different approach I'm going to have to work on. I mean, it doesn't stop me working on game design, and it doesn't necessarily increase or decrease the amount of output that I would have in terms of boxes with my name on it. I just think the world has changed around us a bit, and we're all kind of reacting to it. It's a shame.
So what other games? That's just one. That's just one thing you've mentioned, really. What other things?
Rome, Sweet Rome, Mike.
Right.
Game. I'm really excited about that, and Uli at Spielworks is having a look at that.
Right,
great. I'm doing stuff with Matt. I've got Polygonia, which is that weird Lego-based game.
Yeah, I saw that. That was that was
like super heavy multi-use card thing. And then we're doing Iron Almanac, which is effectively Snowdonia, the card game, dice game.
Right. Okay.
And it looks straightforward. You roll the dice. Everybody picks 3 or 2 dice, depending on the weather, from those that have been rolled. A bit like drafting the dice in Macau, which colors you want and how many you get. And it looks really simple. You know, you're moving pieces along, collecting resources, but actually it's a bit of a brain burner. I played it at the Philosophy Club a couple of weeks ago, and I was watching other people, and they were struggling at times, not because it's complicated, but just because actually there's a lot to think about.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
It's a harder game than it looks. And it was a bit like that, actually, with Ben and I, when we kind of got round to the heart of it, when we'd settled on everything. It is a harder game than it looks. You know, oh, it's easy. You choose an action, turn the card over. And then people start sort of going, oh my God, I need to think about 3 turns from now. And I don't care about what you're doing very much, which is the whole point of a 2-player game.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than a 2-player game where you can play multiplayer solitaire. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's got to be utterly interactive. Otherwise, what's the point of having a pure 2-player game? So
I tend to agree. Yeah.
I suppose the collaborations I'm doing, they seem to be coming out because they're thematically and mechanically the things that I like. Working with somebody else that likes that kind of thing means the games are coming out harder, which I like.
Right.
I really like, you know. And when you think that we started with Copper Twaddle and Bloody Legacy,
well, they're good. They have their place. Yeah. Oh, by the way, speaking of older games, I am at some point in the next 2 years going to seriously work on Origins of Civilization. I know I've been saying that for the last 10 years.
Every time we meet,
I am going to do it. I am actually going to do it. But the thing is, my problem is I can't turn down projects. That's my trouble. Yeah. And obviously, Kingmaker is the overriding project at the moment, because we've got Ming Voyages and March Progress out the way done. And yes, we will keep doing the Pocket Campaign series games, and I'm working on things with Rob Harper on that, and also I'm working on Snails and Growls with Dave.
What about Aurora with Bears? Are you still doing that?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, we are. We are. I think we're just going to go with the 2-player. There may be a 3 or 4-player variant, but I think we'll publish it as a 2-player.
In terms of a wargaming theme or a certainly historical theme, I think there's the mechanics of the game certainly suggest some kind of political shenanigans. So I think you could retheme it to be something very interesting historically, rather than the fantasy thing that we were kind of.
Yeah.
It never felt right. What do you think? What do you think sort of historical things do you think this could fit into?
I have no idea. I think I need to spend some time just brainstorming. I think I just need to
You're
get
boiling down 4 candidates effectively.
Yeah, I think I might actually try brainstorming with people like Rob and Dave and
Kingmaker.
Charlie and stuff.
Kingmaker.
Kingmaker. Another Wars of the Roses. Just what we need. We need more Wars of the Roses games. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a historical or political or something theme there, and I've thought that for quite a while. I just haven't actually come up with one. So
God bless him. He is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. If you say, Dave, can you find something historical that fits with it? Off he goes.
Well, to be fair, I mean, theoretically, I ought to do that because it was the Ming Voyages was my theme originally. It was Dave's concept for the game, but Dave came to me to say, how can we have a theme for this? And
history.
I thought of the Ming thing because, I do find it a bit odd. I'm not a Ming Dynasty expert at all, and yet I've done two games with the Ming Dynasty as a theme, and
that's fine. That's why you do it nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I still remember. I remember Martin Wallace with his Waterloo game because I mean he did. I know he did some research, but he had weird things on his map, like a marsh on the Waterloo battlefield, which was a significant thing. Anything, but there wasn't a marsh, and the Waterloo battlefield just didn't exist. I mean, yes, the ground was quite wet because it was raining a lot, but there wasn't actually a marsh there. So that was it. That was interesting. And of course, people do more or less research. I mean, there's big things in Kingmaker about can you get the heraldry right? What about the name? Classic one we've got at the moment is the title, the Earl of Devon. Should it be the Earl of Devon or should it be the Earl of Devonshire? And you think life's a bit short for that, actually, to me. And it turns out because
card then have the Earl of Devonshire and the Earl of Devonshire on the other. I mean,
it turned out that one of the guys who's one of the guys who's very good, and he likes what I'm doing with Kingmaker, but he's done this Bella Rosarum game, which is Kingmaker, but taken down that historical rabbit hole to the nth degree. And he's done huge amounts of research. He's so knowledgeable about the whole period, and he can quote the Latin too. But it turns out that in a lot of the written records, it's that they put Earl of Devon, but there's a little dot or a little symbol after Devon, because what they've done is they've shortened it from Devonshire.
Yep. So it gets around both bases.
And that leaves real confusion into people's minds, because there is an Earl of Devonshire specifically introduced as another title in the 17th century. So people then will therefore automatically think, oh, Earl of Devon's different from the Earl of Devonshire, but in fact, it might actually be the same thing.
I think you're right. It's life's too short, mate.
I don't want to go down that route.
Somebody's asked about Aleph Null. Aleph Null, which is my solo demon summoning game. Thank you, R1R1G. Well, yeah, from my perspective, that's finished, and that's with Matthias at the moment, Matthias Nage at Frosted Games, and the plan is possibly next year, although I've yet to confirm that with Matthias. I'd love to get Alex Lee back in to do the artwork, as he did such a gorgeous atmospheric job on Lux Eterna. And of course, what's so marvelous about Aleph Null is that our pal, daily blogger, Meeple on Board, Nick, on BGG, is a very eminent professor of music and a writer of music and various choral works and all sorts of stuff, has written a 6-part piano suite.
Oh, wow.
Company Aleph Null. His blog today, actually, Saturday the 24th of October, is about how it's coming along and how he's doing the finishing touches to it. He's been blogging about it over the last month, and it is quite something to hear. To hear somebody produce a specific piece of music to go with the game to help add the atmosphere. Remember, we were going to do this with Lux.
Yes. Well, we have done it a bit with Lux, but
we have done. We picked it beautiful music. Ligeti.
And are we? I mean, we haven't decided on it yet, but we could publish Aleph Null through SSG as well as Matthias, unless you want
royalty, mate. I mean, we'll have to talk about it.
We'll talk about royalties. We don't negotiate over the video, obviously.
Exactly. I mean, there's other things going on as well, but it makes such a lovely companion piece to Lux Eterna, which sort of puts me in the pressure of maybe coming up with a third solo game with a slightly strange and unusual theme.
A triptych of games for that
trilogy of things. Yeah, I think it's the way I like to go. I mean, Aleph Null came out of simply my annual rereading of one of my favorite books of all time, the James Blish
Black Easter. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
which
good.
is,
Oh, I haven't read that. I haven't read that for a while, actually.
you should
Yeah.
read it. It's an
reread it,
astonishing piece of work. There is
Oh yeah, I love it.
to it, a sort of practicality, an everyday practicality about
Yes.
the business of summoning up all
Demonology.
the demons from hell and loosing them out on the world for one night, just to see what they would do.
Demonology for the practical magician.
Yeah, exactly. I was playing Fish Farewell Forever, that wonderful game I got at Spiel last year. And, I thought, this is perfect. What I'm trying to do is boil away using, if I imagine I start off with all of this equipment and all of this knowledge, and I'm trying to boil it away to my one goal, which is to summon the demon. That's perfect for a deck deconstruction game. And it came together really quickly. I mean, literally, I was doodling on the Sunday morning over a cup of coffee the ideas behind cards, and by the end of that week I had the first version of the deck made up and printed out, and I was running through it and starting to tweak things.
I love it when that happens.
Yeah,
I mean, that happened to me with March of Progress, because I mean, with March of Progress, I was rereading Clausewitz on War, as I occasionally do, which is a bit, which I know is a bit geeky, and I suddenly thought, oh, we could do a little card game of that tension that Clausewitz goes on about, that war always tends to extremes. So I thought, oh well, but the way you can do it is you can have a country, and basically the point of this tending to extremes is you build up your army strength, but building up your army strength reduces the resources that you can generate from your country. So surely we can do this, so you can actually have your country generates victory points, but you need to increase your army strength, because if your armies are weak, you'll lose. So in order to increase your army strength, you have to reduce your ability to generate victory points. So you've got an automatic tension there, and it tends to extremes, which means that basically you're in order to win the war, you're forced to invade a neutral country, preferably, so you can devastate that first in order to increase your army strength. But if you can't do that, you have to devastate your own country to increase your army strength. So I just like that. It suddenly occurred to me that doing that in a very simple card game format, like with, you only need about, well, I eventually came up with 8 cards per side, 8 actions. You only need about 6, but a couple of them are. I've got a move 1 and a move 2, and a attack 1 and attack +1. So slight differences. And that came to me in about it was about a 2-hour period where I got some cards and scribbled things down, and really that basic scenario, I played around with the actual actions and tinkered with it a bit, but the whole of that basic concept and those actions are exactly the same as they were after that first 2 hours, which is just, it doesn't happen very often, I find. I usually agonize over things a bit more, but that was really quick.
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of board game designers who are quite happy to reference reading materials and historical materials that are beloved of them, and I think it always shows in a design when somebody loves the subject of the game. It just always, for me, it always adds an extra point, if you like, to my receptivity to a game. If I can see the person really loves what they're doing, and to me, there seems to be quite a lot of games out there that don't seem to display any kind of love at all. Maybe that's because developers and publishers decide on the themes, and therefore a lot of stuff doesn't come through. So mechanically, they're very good and they're very sound, but there's an extra patina of shine, which I think is often games, because they don't show.
They lack passion, I think. Daniel Danzer, who we spoke to yesterday, our friend who used to do lots of our German translation. He was quite eviscerating about Euro games in that fashion. It's all this, gaining points for no apparent reason, and in the end you end up with 340 points and you win because your opponent only had 335 points. So he's quite passionately against those things, I think. But I think that's, in a sense, if you're doing a kind of neutral, if you like, game system that works, and then you're putting a theme on top, the theme is bound to lack passion, isn't it, really? Because it's the game system that's the critical thing, not the topic. If you want a game with more passion in it, then you need to start with the thing. I'm not saying you always should start with a thing, but you need to start with having a passionate interest in the topic.
We can talk about Confucius this afternoon, because I think that's very much a game that is probably the first game that we did where the theme has driven everything about design and made the design a step above what could have been.
I think
playing Euro. I think your starting with the gift giving was inspired.
That was nice. That was I was pleased. I was very pleased with that.
We'll talk about that this afternoon, because that is I have such admiration for that game. It is tough, challenging, and innovative, and I just, it's so rankles in me that I really think you should do something with it. I really think you should revisit it, and it would be a perfect starter thing, because I think it's a true lost classic. It was lost in the nonsense that went around it. And I think
we'll talk about that this afternoon later on. But yes, I know a lot of people have said
I get quite passionate about Confucius.
Pardon? Yes, you're quite passionate about it. Well, I still think at the moment it's my best design. I think at the moment it seems. I think it's probably my best design. I don't know. I don't have to go for best things, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so what else we've got? Somebody's trying to sell us Bitcoin. I think I don't want Bitcoin. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Not interested in that fucking nonsense. Saying is a get rich quick scheme, unless you're the person who founded the get rich quick scheme. Talking of which, if anybody would like to buy shares in Uncle Tony Boydell, now that I'm going to be an independent designer, I shall set up a Patreon page, and there will be a variety of rewards that I will fail to deliver upon.
That seems fair. That seems very fair.
Doesn't it? Maybe got monetized my blog.
I think. Oh, hello.
Campaign series. Come on, Al. This is proper.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's a serious proper question. Okay. Well, I'm working with Rob Harper at the moment on a. No. It's not been asked yet. You're fine. I'm working with Rob Harper at the moment on his game, which is currently called Castle Wars. Castle War. I don't think it'll have that name, but this is a game with a similar kind of format to Cousins War and Ring Voyages, but it's set in the period of Stephen and Matilda, which is known as the Anarchy, which says quite a lot of it. And the kind of main concept of the game is that the warring parties control various castles, which are key to the progress of their dispute. And in this game, you are trying to. There's 6 castles, and you're trying to gain control of most of them by the end of the game. That's the basic idea, and you do this by secretly playing cards to the castles face down. And you have a 6-card hand, but if you want to draw any more cards, when you draw on your cards, you have to fight one of the engagements at one of the battles. Yeah. So the only way you get cards is by committing to an attack or a defense of a castle. Now, of course, you may be in a situation where you don't really want to do that because you're not ready, but you still have to do it. So there's some nice decisions about how you deploy things, and in the current version of the game, the where you can deploy your troops is decided by a couple of dice. So each player has 2 dice, and you roll those 2 dice, and the numbers indicate which castles you can deploy against. So that there's 6 castles, so 1 to 6. So if I roll a 2 and a 3, then I have to put my dice against the second and the third castle. My opponent's done the same, and those where the dice are where you can actually deploy. So you haven't got free deployment of wherever you like. You have to go with what's been rolled. And if you roll, whenever you've done a battle, you get to re-roll the dice. And if 3 of the dice are the same, all the dice get re-rolled. So there's variation. So you have to be using your cards in a flexible way so you can take advantage of any opportunities that come up. That's the key thing. And there's also that secretive thing. So I might have 3 cards against a castle, but are they any good? So you can bluff your opponent. It's fun. It's a 2-player game, so it's going to be a bit zero-summy, but then that's fine, I think. And we're trying to develop the overall concept there and make sure we've got meaty enough and interesting enough decisions for players. That's where we are at the moment. So that's the possible next in the campaign, in the Pocket Campaign series.
Do you think you'll get to a point where you might release a campaign series expansion box where it contains a series of expansions for all of the games that you've done so far? So you'd buy a box and it would have Ming Voyages, a couple of historical scenarios for March of Progress, that kind of thing. Cousins War stuff, or
I think that's quite likely. Yes, because I mean, well, we've done one. We already did an expansion for Cousins War. We put it in the box for the 2nd edition, but certainly for the March of Progress, I've already got a range of things we can add to the March of Progress. Well, there's probably enough to have another whole box just for the March of Progress, but we certainly make it as part of a box of expansion. That's quite a neat idea, actually.
People who like the campaign series, like everything in the campaign series. I mean, Ming Voyages and March of Progress have been getting some fantastic reviews, and I think you've kind of hit a seam there of people who will readily take what you put out there because your quality control is so good anyway. I think that kind of thing where eventually you get to, I think Istari did a box of expansions for all the Istari, didn't they, at one point? But it feels like that would be a perfectly eminently sensible thing to do, and it would just breathe a little more life into some of the games that have lined up in order from 1 to whatever on the shelf.
We've also got there's 2 of us working concurrently also on possible editions of World War II little pocket campaign things as well. A bit more wargamey, so kind of more hardcore war games, but in a small box.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be cool. I kind of love the idea of having a hardcore hex encounter game in that size box, but with plenty of depth in it.
Yeah.
So a bit like the Cousins War and Ming Voyages do the kind of Twilight Struggle multi-use cards thing in a small box. I like the idea of having that. Yeah, well, you can have your SPI Avalon Hill hex encounter game, but it's a small one, but with loads of depth. You have to have that. You have to keep that depth of interest, depth of theme, even though it's in a small box, and that's where I think we score. So it's not a filler. Well, I mean, okay, they're short games, but they're not just filler games. They're proper grown-up games, but in a small box. That's the idea. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm noodling, of course, always. I did the Isle of Man scenario for Snowdonia because the pack became a necessary thing. I'd like to receive any Isle of Man stuff. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't got a copy of my own design bloody thing.
Oh, so I thought they sent you them separately. Oh, I've got 6.
No, they haven't. They're sending them when I think we've done something with the current wave, but I haven't got any at all. I've not even seen.
I better send you some. I've got 6. I've got 6.
All right. No, don't worry. They'll arrive eventually. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'm not worried.
I'll just look. Oh, delicious.
I know. Look, I felt so bad. There's so many problems with that.
Yeah.
I thought what I'll do is I'll do an Isle of Man, a bit like I did the Ladder's Lost card when that container of promos disappeared.
Yeah.
All those years ago, but. That's fun to do. I don't know if I'm going to do any more Snowdonia.
Isle of Man rules. It's really nice, actually. Yeah, I like it.
I know. I'm pleased to do the double weather thing.
I haven't opened it. You haven't actually played it. You haven't had a chance, but yeah, it looks nice.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. But I don't know whether I'm going to do any more of those. The Iron Almanac game, for that, every card, and there's 72 cards, has got a specific railway within the UK. So it represents heritage railways, but also just general routes, between Cardiff and Gloucester or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of different criteria within that. So I could pick a couple of those and decide to zoom into them and make them Snowdonia scenarios. But I guess ideas for
Yeah.
an Alibari expansion, which
It's interesting how many. Sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting how many railways there are out there. I mean, we were in the White Peaks and the Peak District at the start of October, and we were walking around a lake, and we looked on a map, and you think, oh, this is the this is the route. This is the old route of a light railway around the lake. It's one of these ones for quarrying. You know, you think, wow, another one. I mean, you
Well,
can do that. Limestone quarries. There's lots of limestone.
a wonderful history of railways.
Yes.
And I think that would be a marvelous scenario.
I've got
a game a bit like Alibari, actually, because the Isle of Wight's got so much going on in it.
I've got a game. I've got a prototype of my Chicken to Ride game, which is basically the Isle of Wight. It's a game. It's supposed to be a humorous game about transport in the Isle of Wight, and it uses the conceit of the game, if you like, is it uses the route of the railway for tracking how fast the various pieces go, but the only transport type that is not in the game is railway. So you can go by balloon, you can go by helicopter, you can go by teleporter, but you can't go by rail. But you do go through the stations. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm allowed to go into that area. I think it'd be quite fun to do that. I'd quite like a Murder on the Orient Express.
On the Isle of Wight Railway?
No. Snowdonia, another Snowdonia game.
Another Snowdonia game. Yes, yeah.
So where that way, I always love the idea that the ghost player, right, the event system would be killed at some point, would be murdered. As part of the progression of the game. I think
you haven't done the Orient Express.
No, I know.
Yet. Oh, wow, yeah.
There's the Trans-Siberian Express.
Well, people was supposed to be working on the Trans-Siberian.
I think there's scope there for doing a few more things in future.
Oh God, there's. I just think there's an endless supply of really interesting railways that we haven't covered. It's a rich seam of something.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I never considered the Snowdonia scenarios to be expansions. I always consider them to be scenarios, because I think that the beauty of the Snowdonia system is that you're not just adding on some stuff. You're actually saying, right, this module, it's like a module. We do like this module. We take this bit out and replacing with something just as good as the original one. So I think that's the key, rather than expand. I was just thinking, I'm so disappointed with the expansions like the Istanbul expansion with coffee or whatever it is in it. Yeah. And you think, but it's just more of the same. Well, okay, there's slight differences, but it doesn't. Well, okay, in a very real sense, it does add to the game, but it doesn't add to my enjoyment of the game, because it's one of those things which has been added on, where in a game design you should be making sure that all you've got left is the essential bits. So why would I play Istanbul with the expansion if it's actually better without the expansion? Yeah. So I had that problem when right back to the old original Civilization game. The old Harlan Trefoil. Francis Tresham game, may he rest in peace. And I just loved the original game. I mean, Advanced Civilization, and you think, well, but they introduced luck into it, and the whole point of that Civilization game was it had virtually no luck. But apparently people like a bit of luck.
Yeah, we were never going to do expansions at Surprise Day.
Yeah, that's right.
It was very pompous and ivory tower about it, wasn't I? Oh, just a cash grab, isn't it? Grumble. Yeah. You never find us doing that. ... Oh, the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we did expansion for Cousins War as well.
Yeah. We did. I think the key thing is that it's the more of the same element. One of my favorite expansions of all time is Farmers of the Moor, because it introduces a completely different element to actions that doesn't involve worker placement. The drafting of those special effect cards completely changes the dynamic of the worker placement in the game, and makes certain resources easy to get that wouldn't have been easier to get before. And it just adds something that's not in the original game. Yeah. You can get the extra, more of the same stuff by buying all the new decks, which is lovely. I love all that kind of stuff. But Farmers of the Moor I don't think gets the respect it deserves for being further development of the game rather than It's more of the same.
rather than add-on. I mean,
Yeah.
I found that with the 2 Prelude expansions, one for Terraforming Mars, and the other one for Quartermaster General, which we bought at almost exactly the same time. And you know, the Quartermaster General one is really good because Quartermaster General, kind of the vanilla Quartermaster General, starts theoretically the start of World War II, but you all start with an army on a capital city, and you think, well, that's not how it was in 1939 at all. I mean, it's just bizarre. So Prelude it's a whole different little sub game before the start of Quartermaster General, and it colours in those bits of pre-war shenanigans, so that each game start will be slightly different from the previous game start, and it does it in such a really nice, interesting way. It doesn't take too long, and it's just there, but it just means that the start positions in every game will be slightly different. So you know, the British might actually have an army in France at the start of World War II, or the Japanese might actually control China, or the Russians might control China. You know, so there's those little things which colour the start of the game quite neatly. And Terraforming Mars similarly, it means you've got a what would you call it? A turbocharged start of the game, which makes a huge difference to the play.
So I like it because it takes the first half an hour out of the game. Honestly.
Yeah.
Choking here, and I haven't even eaten for 10 minutes.
Oh, bless you. Oh.
This is ridiculous. Oh dear. Yes, I think I love Terraforming Mars, but there is the first grind through the first half hour of just trying to get.
There you go. Have some water.
Yeah.
That didn't work very well, did it? Because I can't get the mirroring right. Never mind.
Well, Prelude kicks it off, and you can get going, and I really like that with it. I didn't like the colonies bit to it, and I didn't like the weird sort of political thing in the late turmoil. I just felt they just expanded the game to the point where there was just too much going on, and it lost the thing that was exciting for me, which is the card play. I love the card play.
And we don't play any of the expansions except Prelude for Terraforming Mars, because it doesn't. Again, I don't think it really needs.
Not even Venus Next, so you can do the old giggle every time.
We don't even. No, we don't even do that. No.
Oh, look at the number of floaters I've got. Ooh, time to flush my floaters. All that kind of stuff.
No, don't go there. We don't go there. No. It's a family show.
Oh, you didn't tell me. I don't think you turn up for a family show with me. I have
not at all.
My language.
Well,
I think it's quite well used.
Yeah, we've been blethering on for more than an hour. We do have another.
We do.
We do have another one at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, yeah.
3 o'clock.
Yeah.
The next episode in the A History of Surprises series, chaired by Ben Maddox.
Yeah.
So that will all be happening at 3. I think we're actually more or less ready for it, aren't we? Just have to send out the links. But do you need to go and have some lunch or something? Or
I've got it here, but yeah, we shall chinny wag in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, unless there are any more questions, I think we'll.
No, we had a couple of lovely. Thank you for dropping in, folks.
Thanks very much for dropping in, and thanks for those questions. It's been great, and
I'll post all these videos on my blog next week anyway. It'll give me something to post every day because I'm finding it quite difficult at the moment. Not with with no real session reports.
What I could post my I could post them on my blog. That means flesh out my number of posts. Yeah.
Well, I think it's right. I mean, we've gone to the effort of doing all of this. I think it's quite right to publicize it a bit more. I think they're quite interesting, mostly. I
think so. Yeah, I like to think so. And on that very positive note, let's say bye, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will hopefully see you at about 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks, Tony. Speak to you later. Bye.